through an industry initiative where we at Supply Chain Insights wanted to gather together the line of business leaders and also technologists to spur a discussion against a problem, because we were hearing that people had networks, maybe they're private networks, maybe they would be SAP Ariba or Alemica or E2Open or GT Nexus, or perhaps a transportation network from TMC or CH Robinson or DHL, and that they lacked the connectivity to be able to move from network to network for the information. So today I'm joined by a panel of Christine Barnhart from Berry Plastics. Christine leads the Center of Excellence at Berry Plastics. Christine's been very involved in this work, and she actually is in the center of very large companies. She buys from very large chemical companies. She services large food and beverage, consumer packaged goods, and retail companies, and very frustrated with the number of portals. Trevor Miles hasn't made it yet for the webinar. I'm hoping that he'll join us, but Kinaxis has been very involved with concurrent optimization, and many people that are on the webinar today are Kinaxis users. Brian Tessier is the VP of Innovation for Schneider Electric, and Brian has been very instrumental in this work, helping us to be able to drive testing. And Brian brings with him a lot of experience with blockchain, and he is the future, I think, of driving innovation and processes where companies allow a group within a corporation to actually do testing. And Pawan, Senior Vice President of Product Strategy from E2Open, has been very involved with the group as well and has agreed to participate in the testing, as has Cindy Hain, the Vice President of Product Management from Alemica. So, Regina, if we can unmute the panelists now. What I'd like to do is just engage with each of you about why you think this work is important. So, Brian, are you available?
Yep, I'm here, Laura. Good morning.
Good morning. Why do you think this work's important? Why did Schneider want to join this activity?
So first and foremost, I think that when you talk about the network of networks and some of the promises that have been made by a lot of our technology providers in regards to interoperability and being able to communicate with our value chain partners at the speed of business, a lot of those things haven't come to fruition. So we kind of stand at a nexus in the technological development of some of the enabling technologies right now. And it's a very exciting time because this may not have been able to take place maybe 5 to 10 years ago, but now with blockchain, with Hadoop and some of the other technologies that are coming along on the data side, along with a decrease in the cost of processing power, we're in the optimal position for us to try something new and really change the game. So I'm excited about this program because not only does this offer us a platform for transformation in many areas of the business, but it's also an opportunity for me to invite folks in the value chain, like the folks that are on the panel here today, as well as people who are attending the webinar, to collaborate with us and really start to think differently about how we work with the folks throughout our supply chain.
Thank you, Brian. And Christine, why is this important to you and Barry?
Hey, thank you. I think for Barry this is important because we are, as you mentioned, this kind of sandwich in the middle of very, very big suppliers and very, very big customers. So, we're kind of being pulled in multiple directions. We don't have a lot of bargaining power, if you will. And so it puts a lot of onus on us to interface in multiple venues, multiple avenues. A lot of complexity is added to our business because everything is hard-coded, right? I mean, we're still utilizing technology from the 1960s and the 1970s, and for us, these new realms, if you will, we believe will allow us to take a giant leap forward and interface better both with our suppliers and our customers.
Now, Christine, at one of our conferences, you talked about how many portals you have. Can you share kind of order of magnitude of why this is such a high level of business pain for you?
Yeah, so we aren't even sure exactly how many portals we are interfaced with. It depends on whether you're talking on the supplier side or the customer side, but we know it's in the realm of hundreds. We also know that depending upon the customer, we could be interfaced with multiple portals as, within a specific customer, they may not have a single system. They may have multiple systems. So every time we're brought on board by a new customer of ours, we have the potential of interfacing with multiple networks, and then every time we're bringing on a new supplier, we have the same issue that's kind of happening for us.
Now, Pawan and Cindy, tell us your perspective. Both of you have very established value networks. Why is this important to you, Pawan?
Yeah, so Laura, from our perspective, if you take a step back, supply chains by their nature are distributed, and no one system or no one entity in the supply chain has, information or owns all the decisions that need to be made. However, the dichotomy of that situation of this whole process is that they're successful only when the entire ecosystem works together. So somehow we got to figure out, a way in which this distributed system in the same direction. And like Brian touched upon, right, there have been many developments over the last few years in terms of technology to enable this, as well as the business processes. And for me, what is really exciting is that this initiative is really an attempt to bring together all of us as a collective, technology side as well as in the practice side, to determine how can we bring technology and business processes and really next level of evolution in the supply chain. And I think the right mix of technology and process change is really needed for us to, the performance of the entire supply chain, entire supply network to the next level. And for E2Open, that has established network, for us that has established practice, extremely important for us to provide the next level of evolution for our customers and our trading partners. So it's exciting for us from a technology standpoint, from what the possibilities can be unleashed as a part of this.
Awesome. And you've been great to come to all of our sessions, so we appreciate it. And Cindy, you have as well. Why is this important to Alimica? Alimica is a supply chain operating network that's been more focused in the chemical industry. Why is this important for Alimica?
Right. Hi, and thank you. Thanks for having me here today. We at Alimica operate a supply chain operating network for the process industries, as you mentioned, and one of our core tenets is interoperability. But at the same time, another core tenet is that we allow our partners to connect to us in whatever way they can. And so we offer a lot of flexibility in their ability, come as you are, come to our network in whatever way you can. So those two can be at odds with each other if we don't, and an initiative like this can really kind of assist in that, because while we're also trying to be as flexible as we can for how our customers connect to us, our partners connect to us, we need to be able to do that in an effective manner. And so we're kind of heeding the call of our customers and their frustration and how long it takes to get some of these partners onboarded, and looking at this initiative to really help us solve that problem so that we can continue to do both things, be the flexible network and the most interoperable network for our partners.
Well, awesome. We actually started this as a small group in the spring of last year, and the first meeting was kind of awkward because we weren't sure where we were going to end up. But the reason that we started the meeting was we wanted to bring a cross-industry group together to really stimulate thinking on next-generation supply chains. I'd had a lot of companies, as I've done my research on visibility, say that they have a lot of different networks or portals like Christine was talking about, but there wasn't any interoperability. And so we've had 3 face-to-face meetings, and at each face-to-face meeting, we've invited technologists who are working on open source technology like Hadoop and Apache Spark and blockchain and cognitive learning to ideate with us. So business leaders have brought the business pain, and we've brought technologists together to really say, could we solve some of the issues that we're having with onboarding and interoperability through new technologies? And to give you some perspective, this particular storyboard that we're going to share today came about from our November meeting, which our meetings are open and the work that we're doing is open. And the purpose of this call is really to drive a call to action for other people to join us. Our next meeting will be in April, and we will be testing the concepts that we're talking about today in the February-March period. And these were some of the manufacturers that participated in the development of the storyboard that we're going to share today. And these were some of the technologists that were working with us as well. We were really ideating about how could we solve the problem of interoperability and onboarding in a different way. Now, one of the things you have to do in a group like this is start with a definition. And our working definition right now is that a network of networks would be the adoption of distributed and open technology by the ecosystem of technology providers and business users to drive interoperability in value networks, so across trading partners to improve business outcomes. Now, one of the sessions we actually drew what a network of networks would look like, and we wanted it to be like perhaps the TV provider or the Wi-Fi signal provider where it's available and people can just log in, and that it's moves across companies. So we know that it is many-to-many, and we know it requires a process canonical. And we also believe that it requires a rules-based ontology to be able to drive cognitive learning for mapping of master data across the networks. And we believe also that it requires visualization, perhaps benchmarking, and that it goes across many trading partners, so that it isn't just one-to-one, that it's many-to-many. And one of the principles is that we can write once and we can use data across the trading partners. So one of the first tests that we're going to do is onboarding across networks so that we could have a trading partner like Berry Plastics or like Schneider Electric have the right access one time and then read it across the networks of E2Open and Alemica and whoever else decides to test with us to be able to see the onboarding. Now, the drawing on the left-hand side was actually drawn by a participant. This was a participant from Dow, and essentially her drawing shows that it is many-to-many and that it does have the ability to go across companies. Now, we also have a survey that we're doing where we're looking at the business pain because we're trying to document, what are our issues with network connectivity. And this was a small sample size of people that were participating in the group, and we actually are trying to get more respondents. And so at the end of this, I'll also share some surveys that we're doing if you want to participate to help us to actually benchmark the use case. We'd love to have your input. But we were looking at, how mature do people feel that they are in current networks. And you can see that the transactional capabilities of invoicing and settlement are more mature, but at the lowest level, trading partner onboarding is the least mature, and it's actually where the group has decided to start the work. So, for the panel, what are you hoping that we learn from this work that can help the industry? Pawan, what do you start and give us your perspective?
Yeah, so from, what I'm really looking for is, I would classify them into three broad categories, right? One is really, what are the needs? We don't necessarily want to build something up for which we don't really have an underlying need. So what is really driving the need in the industry? That's number one, understanding the needs. Number two, understanding the possibilities. Technology unleashes a bunch and a whole broad set of possibilities. Understanding what the possibilities are from a technology standpoint, as well as from a business process evolution standpoint. And then when you put the two together, a set of opportunities get unleashed. So trying to understand what those are and trying to understand the relative importance of those, the relative benefits of those, that's really the three ends of the spectrum that we're trying to get to. Understanding what the needs are, what the possibilities are with the technology, and then what do those needs and technologies together open up as opportunities that we can jointly, as a part of this initiative, as a part of this collective, go after and unleash for, the broader supply chain, for the broader community.
Thank you, Pawan. How about you, Cindy?
Yes, sorry. So, I think what would be interesting for us is to coalesce, all of us in the group, to coalesce around what is causing the complexity for these onboardings. And we've talked a couple of times in our discussions to say, moving data around, that's not really where the value is. Where the value is what we do with the data. And I would say, extending that to, well, doesn't that necessarily mean that Berry Plastics doesn't have to represent an order in a completely different way than a Dow has to represent an order? Can't we come up with some common ground there? So kind of having us all reach the same conclusions, or the conclusions, and coalesce around why are these things so complex? Why does one organization represent a supply chain transaction in such a different way from another one? And is that really necessary? And can we kind of eliminate some of this unnecessary complexity by building this network of networks and the canonical structures around that?
Awesome. Brian, your thoughts here? What are you hoping that we learn, and why is this important?
So, coming from Schneider Electric, I don't know how well the audience is aware of what we are, but we're basically 181 years old. We're an extremely complex business that's grown explosively in the last several decades through acquisition, which, to kind of pile on with what Cindy said, has really exploded the level of complexity that we have both within our business and with the diversity of folks that we have to deal with in the supply chain. That complexity is really making it very difficult for us to make quick decisions and have the necessary agility to address issues as they arise. So things that I'm really interested in are trying to find a way to span and simplify that complexity through a collaborative layer. I think that some of the technologies that you're going to talk about, Laura, really do a great job of doing that. But from a business value standpoint, we're looking to solve big problems that have been problems for many, many years. Things like genealogy and traceability, and the ability to expose that information both to my customers as well as the service organizations that help our customers, and also to be able to more quickly adapt when something goes wrong. So there's a lot of opportunity on the table for the network of networks, and very excited to be working on it.
How about you, Christine?
Yeah, I think I would want to echo really what Brian said. I mean, when you look at Berry Plastics, for us, we've had 39 acquisitions in 29 years. So the level of complexity of our business has really increased, and we're not able to capitalize on our scope and scale because we have so many different platforms, so many different customers, so many different sources of data that it makes it really difficult for us to consume all of that in a really concise, holistic manner. So for us, this kind of network of networks, it's not even just about the pilot. We see this application not just in integrating us to our suppliers and our customers, but allowing us to integrate to ourselves as we do these acquisitions. So, for us, I really think at the end of the day, what we want to see is a much more seamless interaction between the business processes and the tools. And if you look historically, in the 80s and the 90s, when PCs were becoming popular, we had to know how to use DOS, right? My children don't have a clue what DOS is. They don't understand how something's programmed. They do understand that they turn it on and it works, and the data's there and they can consume it, where I'm not sure supply chain tools have really kept up with that. And this pilot really gives us the opportunity to see if we can break through that and to get to the point where the value that we're providing as supply chain professionals is more in evaluating what the data is telling us and less about how to get the data.
Well, let's get to it. Now, Brian, we appreciate the fact that Schneider Electric is going to let us test on the digital sandbox that you've got. Can you talk a little bit about the sandbox and the testing that you are thinking about? I know you started with the storyboard here for Schneider in terms of, what you found, and I think we're very fortunate to have you in the group to enable the testing. So tell us a little bit about what you found, and we're asking other manufacturers in the group to give us similar work.
Sure. So basically my approach to this is kind of through the lens of a Six Sigma geek. So I spent about a decade as a Six Sigma Master Black Belt, so I think that's a really good methodology to take a giant problem and break it down into smaller pieces. So the approach that the group decided to come up with was, while we're talking about all the different major components of the overall network of networks, things like the community directory, blockchain, some of the supply chain finance and interoperability goals for the project, we felt that we needed to come up with a specific case that would help us to illustrate the value proposition of all of these little pieces to the business community. So one of the most common issues that was echoed pretty much universally around the last group meeting was around the need for streamlining supplier onboarding using digital tools. What I did was I went back into our business and did some data mining, and then took a look to see exactly how long is it taking, what is the process entitlement for this particular process, and is there sufficient opportunity here for us to demonstrate value if we apply these technologies here. So in addition to running supply chain innovation for our transformation organization, I also head our Center of Digital Innovation that's actually out of Barcelona. And what we've set up there is, in a joint venture with Capgemini, we've got a standing laboratory that hosts hackathons, not only for Schneider problems to come in and for us to rapidly produce proof of concepts, but also we're bringing in vendors and customers and partners from the supply chain so that we lock the right people in a room for a week. We put them in touch with the appropriate technical resources, and then when we walk out, we have something that's able to demonstrate the value of what we're actually trying to accomplish. So the goal for us is to take this process, and I know this is a very Schneider-centric view, but all of the other groups that are participating with us are going to take a similar look at their processes, then they're going to come back to me, and I'll do the analysis so that we can come up with an aggregate view of what the opportunity for a solution like this would be. Then within my lab, all the parties will come together and we'll run a couple of hackathons, and then we'll start to produce a tangible, demonstrable outcome from trying to solve this problem using all the technologies that Laura's been talking about. So really the goal is for us to, in a very short period of time, put our money where our mouth is and actually come out of the gate with something that a larger group of people could sign up for and join us. And my hope is not only the folks that are on the panel here today will participate with us, but some of you that are on with us in this WebEx also, I would very much appreciate if you would at least stay connected and involved, because your input relative to how your processes are running, as well as your ideas for improvements, could be pivotal in how we actually attack this problem.
That's so true, and just because people didn't come to our last meetings or they haven't been involved, the way we've set this up is we always onboard people so that there's no such thing as a stranger. But if we look at Schneider, the fact that it takes you 26 days and 31 participants, and it's a barrier to being able to onboard suppliers. Who would have ever thought in our digital world that it would take so long? Were you surprised at the results?
The level of reliance on spreadsheets and emails and phone calls, along with process workflows that don't have built-in escalation, that don't have SLAs that require an additional action in order to keep the things moving. There's a lot of wait time in this process. So the assessment showed us that only 47% of the time was time elapsed. So we had a lot of time that was just basically wasted time for us. And if you think about the situations that you may need to switch a supplier quickly in the event of a quality or a safety issue, having things waiting is just absolutely unacceptable, especially given the state that we all live in. And when you can get Amazon to respond and deliver in the same day, you have things sitting in a process like this that might have severe implications is just patently unacceptable. So very surprising to me. It didn't seem like it was very surprising to the purchasing folks that I've talked to and some of the other people in your group, Laura, but there's a lot of opportunity for improvement here.
So what we did as a group, we started working on a process flow that we would test for onboarding. And so we're thinking about doing two flows, one for a transportation service and one for a material that would tie to a bill of material. And the concept is that we would use a common system of registry across the flows using blockchain for the green flows, and that on the transactional level, we would work on the interoperability testing of rules-based ontologies and cognitive learning to PO initiation and PO acceptance. So what we're planning as the first work is a very simple test, just to test the technologies and then see if we can make this work. So we would bring people on, certify the supplier on the network, and then we would change information to be able to certify the supplier on the network of networks. So Limica and E2Open and perhaps SAP Ariba and perhaps a private network that a manufacturer would have. Now, Brian, I know you've been doing quite a bit of testing with blockchain. What's your perspective about the feasibility of technologies to meet this challenge these days?
So I think things are in a unique place at this point for us to be able to at least prototype very rapidly. We do an awful lot of work with IBM's Bluemix environment because it comes pretty much self-contained with all the tools necessary to connect to our systems, to stand up blockchains and smart contracts using their Hyperledger technology. And the environment's just very flexible as far as the ability to iterate designs very, very quickly. So I think that with the folks that have signed up to support us on the technology side, along with some of the foundational technologies from companies like IBM, we're in a very good position in order to solve this problem in the short term. And if you think about the transactional nature of a workflow like this, just consider the capabilities of blockchain as far as the ability to execute smart contracts when certain conditions are actually completed, to be able to transfer value from one company to another based on the state in a given block. It's a game changer, Laura. And not everybody needs to pay the huge money to get on the same system. This is a platform agnostic method for us to sit on top of all of the company's other investments, but still have a transactional layer that lets us get things done. This to me is the biggest development in probably the next 5 to 10 years.
Now, how long have you been working with blockchain, Brian? Because most people on the call probably don't, are scratching their head. Blockchain, Hyperledger. I mean, how long have you been testing it? And tell us a little bit more about your experience.
So I've been working with it for a little over a year now. Before that, I was involved in a couple different smaller initiatives trying to use the back end of Bitcoin's crypto technologies for block consensus to try to solve some other business problems that we have. But the most recent project that I used it for, in order to get a better understanding of the capabilities, was we designed an internet-connected telematics solution with GPS. So it's basically a sensor package in a piece of hardware that's connected to the internet that you would ship with your products, and it transmits all of its sensor data via blockchain, so that if damage happens in transit of one of our major shipments, I would be able to instantaneously provide that information both to the carrier and, using the smart contracts capability in Hyperledger, execute tasks like, say, for example, dispatch a service person to receive the shipment so that the customer doesn't have to deal with the issue. Or if it's like a make-to-order, make-to-stock product, I could reorder that product automatically, RMA it automatically, and the customer would never know that something happened in transit. So taking these very broad pieces of technology like blockchain and trying to solve business problems with them, I've found is the best way to really get a feel for where the limits are for the technology. And blockchain, unlike a lot of other things, is so broad. that you have to be careful about where you apply it. However, I think that the network of networks is a very, very natural extension for us using this.
Well, and Brian, one of the things that you did was you looked at all the systems that you would have to integrate with, 35 systems. How about cognitive learning and the ability to deal with the master data, which is the other part of this testing? How do you feel about that opportunity?
Master data is a massive problem for us, primarily because even if we have a unified source or a federated solution like SAP, there are so many derivatives of SAP and the naming structures. You may find, even though we're going across a few instances of SAP, things are not named the same. So the ability to use cognitive computing and machine learning to act as the Rosetta Stone to translate between these different systems, and then having technologies like Hadoop, where we don't have to do the traditional IT activities like extract, transform, and load and pull it all into one central data repository, that's massive. It's the difference between waiting until we get everybody on the same system, which is never ever going to happen, or being able to deliver value in the short term. So, I think that is another one of the main levers that is positioned us into the realm of actually being able to deliver on the promise of the network of networks.
Yeah, I agree. And, Christine, how does this case study compare to what you see at Berry, and how do you feel about this work?
I think for us it's a direct comparison. I mean, we're working internally with our procurement group to do the exact same type of benchmark and case study that Brian's done at Schneider. I think additionally for us, when we think about the complexity at Schneider and all the different business systems and different processes, we have the exact same issues. So for us, it's bigger than just supplier connectivity. It's customer connectivity, and then internal plant-to-plant, business-to-business connectivity that this potentially impacts and provides a really good solution for the future.
Well, and Brian talked about, the fact that, we can easily go to Amazon and we can navigate. And as we think about globalization, what's happened in the building of global supply chains, more and more procurement organizations have been centralized and buy globally, and there's more need for collaborative workflow across the functions because procurement's very centralized, and we have the needs for these functions to use the data off the networks, and it's very clear this won't come from an ERP backbone. So Cindy and Pawan, how about your thoughts? What do you want to be able to get out of the testing? What's in it for you?
Do you want to go first?
Go ahead, Pawan.
Cindy?
Yeah, so
okay.
Thanks, Cindy. So from our perspective, right, I think where the rubber hits the road is how do you translate a lot of these concepts and ideas and possibilities into, something meaningful. So testing is really the way in which we can make this happen. And, as Brian has touched upon, there are a lot of new technologies and a lot of things that we can bring to bear. Concepts around how these things work, around a couple of use cases around, let's say, onboarding or even, some of the master data mapping and reconciliation is extremely important. And being a part of an initiative where we are not just looking at internal systems that may exist, but also external networks and interoperability between internal systems and external networks is really, in my mind, key to making sure that the ideas and concepts that we're coming up with, the technologies that we're bringing to bear to solve them and address those ideas, can they translate into something meaningful in the real world? So for me, testing is really taking it to the next level, validating some of the thoughts and ideas, and the goals are really beyond how do you take that and actually start making it mainstream across not just the test bed that we've come up with, but in a broader environment across our network, across all the other networks to truly become, the network of networks here.
Mm-hmm. Cindy, your thoughts?
Yeah, so something that Brian said earlier, he pointed out the amount of wasted time in this process, and I can completely echo that. I think Pawan probably can as well as far as the partners that we've onboarded into our networks. So really being able to look at that problem and attack that. So because there's so many fits and starts in that, and when one partner needs to do something and they do something and then they wait for the other partner to do something else, et cetera. So pulling some of the cognitive learning and other kinds of computing components into this activity to try to automate that. That's the thing that's very exciting to me about the process, and what I'm hoping to see as part of our testing is some of that coming to fruition so that we can attack that particular issue and create an environment where maybe not after the proof of concept, but over time we can envision practitioners, supply chain practitioners, being able to self-service and onboard themselves and connect to other partners and start transacting without the need for EDI engineers or other types of folks to be involved in that process. So I know we're not going to get completely there in our proof of concept, but what's important for me is that we prove out that we are going to be able to achieve that vision over time.
So this group is an ongoing group, and we wanted to gain industry steam, so to speak. And what we're trying to do in 2017 is be able to define what is a network of networks, what's possible with current technology, and then be able to build process canonicals that can go across the new technologies and evolution so that we can have interoperability across the networks. And perhaps build training programs and federated technology business models so that there would be requirements of today's technology perhaps to be blockchain enabled or canonical enabled to be able to hook existing enterprise technology into the networks. As we look forward, we have our next meeting in Orlando, April 12th to the 14th, where we'll be talking about the testing, and we'll also be bringing in blockchain experts to be able to continue the ideation based upon the testing, and we are planning to do a session in Europe as well. And then we'll have a meeting in the summer months in Dallas, and then we will share the results at our Imagine conference in Atlanta, September 5th through the 8th. And as we think about this and we think about, what's possible, we're looking at, the confluence of technologies of blockchain, cognitive learning, open source for predictive modeling, Hadoop or massive parallel processing, Apache Spark, which is really for streaming data architectures to be able to move data at the speed of business. And, the possibilities that would change, the first thing that we're going to do is attack a community directory where we write once and then we can feed data across the network as companies change form or change locations. And then it's our goal to actually test traceability, perhaps supply chain finance, and interoperability across the network. So we're not sure what will happen. We appreciate Schneider Electric's ability and willingness to let us do the testing at Schneider. And if you're interested, the problem statement we're going to do in our initial testing is supplier onboarding. We want to start with a global directory, decrease onboarding, and then be able to test blockchain and cognitive learning and share that in our April meeting and decide what our next condition will be. And there's some ground rules. So this is open testing. It's neutral and independent work. We don't want it to be dominated by a single vendor or by a single manufacturer. We want the IP to be open and available to the market. All vendors that work with us volunteer their time, so it's not something where they're going to give Schneider Electric a bill to do the testing. The manufacturers provide data and agree to do the testing. So on the back end, they'll do the testing. They won't necessarily have to go to Barcelona to do the testing, but they'll provide the IT resources to do the testing. And they'll also be able to pull data and pool the data so that we can build the business case. And we and Supply Chain Insights will aggregate that data to protect the confidentiality of people in the testing. We will present the results at the Network of Network sessions and the Supply Chain Insights Global Summit, and it's our hope that that can really spur the next level of value networks so that we don't have networks that don't have continuity to go across networks and that the data can flow. So as we wrap up here, any additional thoughts from the panel that you want to share?
Yeah, Laura, this is Cindy. One of the things that Olimica is doing as a part of this, to contribute to this initiative, is we've built some canonical models, what we call universal business transaction definitions, and we're offering that up to the community for to look at and to see if we can kickstart that canonical discussion. So looking forward to participating in that way, as well as certainly having resources and our technology to bear to help with the proof of concept.
And we will be we shared the canonical, Cindy, and we will be discussing those in our April meeting, so we appreciate that. Anyone else got any thoughts before we wrap this up today?
I just wanted to, echo a point that, Brian, I think you made. I think it's important for us, as we've jump-started this with a smaller group, that others also join and participate. And Laura, you provided a great open forum for everybody to join, both the business practitioners as well as the technology providers. And this initiative is going to be successful and grow as more and more people join. So we're looking forward at E2Open to working with not just our fellow technology providers, but also with the the business users. And we want to welcome everybody to the mix and to this initiative.
Great. Anyone else, Christine or Brian?
Hey, I guess from Barry's standpoint, we just feel like this is a really exciting time in the development of supply chain practices, and really kind of how we move the business forward. So for us, we're really thankful to be part of the group. It's exciting to see so many different suppliers and vendors really working together for the betterment overall of supply chain and business health.
Yeah, it is fun. And I think it's been educational as well. So Brian, anything else before we close here?
Well, Laura, I'm just glad that you started this conversation with the folks that you've gotten involved. I think this is a very unique group of people, a lot of outstanding skill sets and levels of experience that are involved. But I think that we're at a point now in the overall development of how business processes execute that we all need to come together. We need to start to question the way that things have operated up until this point. And, this is one of those few opportunities that we all get collectively to try some things in a safe environment. So, I'll kind of pile on with everybody else and say, please join us. You don't necessarily need to attend the meetings or necessarily need to come to the conferences, but the diversity of opinion as well as your experiences around solving these problems might make the difference between us cracking this nut and not getting very far on it. So very excited to be part of the group, and thank you very much for the invitation.
So we're starting to get some questions in. Robert asked if he can get a copy of the charts, and absolutely, they'll be available on SlideShare, and we'll also send out the information. We'll also, at the conference for the Supply Chain Insights Global Summit, which is going to be outside of Atlanta, we will be live casting that summit, and we'll be sharing all of the results that we're getting. We want to have a series of phased testing up until September, and it's my hope that this thing can ignite a whole new level of technology innovation for B2B. The exciting part for me is, B2C processes took off like wildfire at the beginning of the last decade. The B2B processes are still stuck in, 40-year-old standards. Now, we also have a question, how do we participate? So all you do is you send me an email that says that, you'd like to participate, and here's my contact information. And we'll set up a one-on-one call. And what you have to agree is that you'll share your data if you're a manufacturer, and that you'll provide test accommodations on your IT. So it's not extensive IT, but it's looking and validating that you got message sets or that the data is accurate. and there's probably a day and a half worth of work for a person in IT and a business user to be able to put together the business case like Brian's talked about, and then to be able to participate. If you want to come to our Network of Networks meeting, which it's an open meeting, but it'll be limited to 40 individuals, again, send us an email. And we are registering people for the spring event, and we'll be sending out information for the summer event. And so it is open, and we welcome people to join us and to share in the work. Any other questions for the group today? Well, I just want to thank my panel, and I want to thank the people on the webinar. We will be sending out the slides in the replay, so if you want to share those in your organization, if you want to set up time to talk about the storyboard, I would love to do that. If you're sitting there feeling like, wow, I don't quite know what these terms mean, and this is all really new, we've built some training that might be able to help your organization as well. But we believe that it's time for us to build value networks, and that for globalization to work, that they have to be seamless, and there are too many dark holes in the supply chain. So with that, I want to thank the panel, and thank you for joining us today. Thank you very much.